I never planned to stay in that town longer than it took to swallow a cup of truck stop coffee, but the snow had other ideas. By noon, the storm had dropped thick, wet flakes that clung to the windshield like they were trying to hold me there. My tires skated on the last bend of the mountain pass, and by the time I eased into the only diner I'd seen for miles, I felt like I'd come limping in on the last breath of my luck. Inside, the place was warm, humming with the low clatter of silverware, the drone of a radio playing some AM station that faded in and out like it was being choked by static hands. Everything smelled like burnt bacon and melted snow, the kind of smell that sinks into your coat and rides home with you. The waitress noticed me immediately. She was young, maybe mid-20s, with hair pulled into a tight braid and a silver bracelet that clicked whenever she moved. She kept glancing toward the front windows, the way people do when they're expecting someone who's late. "You headed through?" she asked as she handed me a menu. "Trying to," I said. "Roads are a mess." She shifted on her feet. "You shouldn't stay past sundown." I laughed, thinking she was joking in that small-town way where locals tease outsiders for being soft. "I'm sure the weather will clear." "No," she leaned in, voice low. "I mean it. Don't stay here." Something in her eyes, something jittery like she was carrying around a buzzing secret, made the air between us tighten. Before I could ask more, the diner door opened, letting in a blast of cold and a man in a snow-dusted parka. He stamped his boots, glanced around, and when he saw me, his face tightened like he recognized me, though I'd never seen him before. The waitress's silver bracelet clicked sharply against her tray. Her whole expression changed like a shutter slamming down. She didn't say another word as she went to seat him. I ate fast, but something in the diner felt wrong. Not dangerous, necessarily, just expectant, like everyone else knew a cue I didn't. Two old men in a corner booth whispered while pretending not to look at me. A kid twirled a broken keychain that kept tapping his knuckles, tap, 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 over and over. The radio fizzed, then cut out entirely. When I went to pay, the waitress slid the bill toward me with trembling fingers. "You didn't hear this from me," she whispered, "but travelers don't sleep here, not in winter. You need to leave before it gets dark." "Why?" I asked. "Road hazard? Avalanche risk?" Her eyes flicked toward the man in the parka. He stared into his coffee without blinking. "It's not the roads you need to worry about." She reached into her apron, pulled out a small slip of paper, and pressed it into my palm. Her hand was ice cold. "Don't open it until you're back on the highway." I stepped toward the exit, and the lights flickered. Not just flickered, they pulsed. Bright to dim, to bright again, in a rhythm that made every hair on my arms rise. A few customers murmured. The kid dropped his keychain, flinching like he'd been slapped. "Power lines freeze all the time," the cook called from the back. "Nothing to worry about." But the waitress flinched at his words, like the phrase itself hurt. I left quickly. Snow was already piling on my car roof. The storm had thickened into a white blindness, swallowing the road, the trees, even the sound of my own breath. I drove slow, tires crunching through fresh drifts until I reached the first highway marker. Only then did I open the paper. It wasn't a note. It was a torn piece of newspaper. An article, yellowed, edges singed by time or heat. Local family found after 5 days. Missing searchers say they didn't look like themselves. Below the headline was a photo. A rescue team surrounding 3 figures wrapped in blankets. The faces were blurred, but something about them, something in their posture, their angles, made my stomach twist. At the bottom, in the waitress's hurried handwriting, were 4 words. "They come back wrong." I looked in the rearview mirror. The snow behind me was empty, but the diner lights, just barely visible through the storm, flickered in the same pulsing rhythm. Once, twice, 3 times, then everything went dark. I didn't stop driving until I reached the next town an hour later. At a motel, I asked the clerk if anyone else had come through from the pass. He frowned. "Pass is closed today. Hasn't been open since yesterday morning. That's impossible, I said. I was just at a diner up there. He stared at me, slow and uneasy. There's no diner on that road. Closest one burned down last winter. I tried to argue, but something in his tone made the words dissolve in my throat. In my pocket, the torn article felt damp, like the ink was still freezing to my skin. I spread it out on the motel bed. The photo had changed. It wasn't the rescue team anymore. It was the diner. And every face inside it was turned toward the door, toward me, with the same hollow, hungry expression. Even now, when winter hits and the snow piles high, I catch myself watching mountain diners with their fogged windows and flickering signs. I tell myself it was exhaustion, or isolation, or fear distorting things that were probably harmless. But some nights, especially in storms, I swear I can still hear that silver bracelet clicking. And I know, with a kind of cold clarity I wish I didn't have, that the waitress didn't warn me to save my life. She warned me because she thought I already looked like one of them. I thought the weirdest part of that trip was going to be how cheap the lodge was. We were 4 broke friends in our late 20s, desperate to snowboard somewhere that looked good on Instagram but didn't destroy our bank accounts. When I found the place online, Summit Crest Lodge, rustic winter escape, $59 a night per cabin, we all assumed it was either a scam or a murder shack. Both, my buddy Nate said, tossing his board into the back of my Subaru. But as long as we die with mountain views. We hit the pass late in the afternoon. The sky looked like it was held up with dirty cotton, gray, sagging, ready to collapse. By the time we rolled into the tiny mountain town, the streets were already dusted in that quiet kind of snow that eats sound. Everything felt muffled, fewer footprints than there should have been. The lodge was at the far end of town, past the closed gear shop and a church with a steeple that leaned like it was tired. The Summit Crest Lodge sign was hand-painted and crooked. A string of white Christmas lights sagged over the office door, half of them dead. Inside it smelled like pine cleaner and old coffee. The woman at the front desk had gray hair pulled into a bun so tight it smoothed out her forehead. She pushed a paper sign-in sheet toward me with a ballpoint pen that had someone else's logo on it. "You're the ones from the city?" she asked. "Yeah. We booked cabin 5. She hesitated before nodding. "Storm's rolling in tonight. You'll want to be in before dark." "Yeah, for the roads," I said. "No." She folded the corner of the sign-in sheet, flattening it with her thumb. "For here," Nate snorted. "You got a curfew or something?" She didn't laugh. "You lock your door. No wandering between cabins, no hot tub after sundown, and if he knocks, you don't open the door unless he says your name." I looked up. "If who knocks?" "The old man," she said simply. "You'll see him. Just don't answer if he doesn't know who you belong to." I waited for her to smile, to wink, to admit it was some local joke, but her face didn't move. She slid an actual metal key across the counter. It was attached to a warped plastic tag with a faded 5 written on it in Sharpie. The metal was so cold it made my palm ache. From the corner, a housekeeper looked up from refilling a bucket with ice. She had a pale, ropey scar that disappeared into the collar of her shirt, running from the side of her neck down toward her chest. Our eyes met for half a second. She gave the smallest shake of her head. Cabin 5 was a box of knotty pine and thin walls. The heater rattled when we turned it on, and the bathroom sink whined whenever anyone used it, like old pipes complaining. But it was warm, and there was a tiny porch with a view of the tree line, and the snow was starting to come down in fat, lazy flakes. We dumped our stuff, claimed bunks, and went to check out the amenities. There was technically a hot tub, sunken into a deck between cabin 3 and cabin 4, half full of cloudy water and floating pine needles. The posted rules were sun-faded but meticulous. No glass, no running, no unsupervised children, no use after 7 p.m. "Damn," our friend Liz said. They really hate fun. It's winter, Nate said. They're trying not to fish drunk people out of the snow at midnight. Behind the cabins, the woods pressed close. Not dramatic evergreen cliffs or sweeping vistas, just dark branches, crowded together, leaning over the back fence like they were trying to listen. Feels like a summer camp where no one makes it to the end of the movie, I joked. We all laughed because we were still in that part of the trip where everything was a joke. The first knock came at 6:42 p.m. We'd come back from an afternoon run at the small ski hill, showered off the cold, and were halfway through a terrible movie on someone's laptop. Liz had made a pot of tea, insisting it felt right for the setting. The kettle whistled thinly. The heater rattled. Someone's phone buzzed against the wooden table. Then, 3 slow, heavy knocks. They sounded wrong. Not like knuckles on wood, more like something blunt and patient hitting the door. We all froze and looked at each other. Probably the lady from the front desk, Nate muttered, getting up. Curfew check. Wait, I said, my hand shooting out without thinking. Ask who it is first. Hello, he rolled his eyes but called out, Who is it? Silence. Then a voice. Male. Old but not frail. Too close to the door, like his mouth was pressed right against it. Who do you belong to? The words slid under the door like ice. We all stared at each other. Liz mouthed, What the fuck? Nate laughed nervously. UPS, he whispered, but his fingers had curled away from the knob. Wrong cabin, sir, I called. We already checked in. Another knock, heavier. Who do you belong to? The key tag in my pocket felt suddenly heavier, dragging at my jeans. No one moved. After a long minute, we heard footsteps crunching away in the snow. Slow, dragging, like boots that didn't lift all the way off the ground. I hate this place, Liz said, trying to sound joking and not quite pulling it off. The next morning, on the way to my car, I saw him. He was standing between cabin 2 and cabin 3, facing the woods. A long brown coat that looked older than the lodge itself, a knit hat pulled low over white hair, and bare hands despite the cold. His skin had that paper-thin look, veins like blue rivers. Morning, I said, because I have that reflex to be polite even when I'm scared. He turned his head slowly. His eyes were wrong. Not cloudy like cataracts, not empty like dementia. Just very, very focused. Too focused. Who do you belong to? He asked. It took me a second to realize he was looking past me, at Liz behind my shoulder. She fumbled her board, nearly dropping it. We're together, she said. Just friends on a trip. He stared at her for an uncomfortably long time, like he was checking for something only he could see. Then he shuffled away without another word, coat swaying around his ankles. Okay, Liz said, exhaling hard. New lodge drinking game. Take a shot every time that guy makes eye contact. Die in 3 minutes. But her hand shook slightly when she put the board on the rack. At the front desk, I mentioned him. The old guy out by the cabins. Is he family? The gray-haired woman stamped something on a clipboard. Harold, he used to own the place. Is he okay? I asked carefully. He keeps asking who we belong to. She shrugged, the motion tight. He's old. Mind wanders. He likes to check on guests. Harmless. The word sat wrong in my ears, like she was reading off a card. As I turned away, the housekeeper with the neck scar passed by, carrying a basket of folded towels. For a second, the collar of her shirt dipped enough that I could see the scar all the way down. Pale, raised, like someone had tried to pull her apart. She paused beside me and spoke without looking up. Locks work, she murmured. Use them. What? But she was already moving again. That night, we decided to use the hot tub, rules or not. Come on, Nate said. We'll be in and out. It's not like they've got snipers on the roof. 7:15 p.m. By the time we pulled on swimsuits and heavy coats and crunched our way over the packed snow, the tub's water steamed faintly, smelling like chemicals and sap. The Christmas lights over the cabins glowed weak and yellow. 10 minutes, I said. We stick together. No one wanders. Mother hen, Nate teased. The water was shockingly warm, almost too hot after the cold air. For a minute, it felt incredible, muscles relaxing, breath fogging, snow drifting down in lazy spirals around us. If you ignored the creak of trees and the invisible weight of the woods, it was almost peaceful. Footsteps crunched somewhere behind the cabins. We all stiffened. Probably another guest, Liz whispered. Or Harold, Nate said, coming to check who we belonged to. He said it in mock spooky voice, and we all chuckled, but it sounded like we were laughing in church. Forced, thin. The footsteps came closer, then stopped. I could see the shape of our cabin from the tub. The porch light flickered once, twice, then steadied. Okay, Liz said abruptly. I'm done. This is giving me weird campfire horror flashbacks. I'll race you, Nate said, sloshing toward the edge. Last one back to the cabin has to answer the door if he knocks. That's not funny, I said. Deniable horror, man. He grinned. It's only scary because we're making it scary. He hauled himself out of the tub, water streaming off him, and darted toward cabin 5 in bare feet and a towel. Liz went after him, laughing breathlessly. I lingered a second, watching the tree line. The snow made everything soft and indistinct. A branch shifted, or maybe it was something between the trees. My heart thudded. I got out, wrapped myself in my coat, and jogged toward the cabin. The porch light flickered again. Through the window I could see Nate and Liz inside, moving around, silhouettes against the lamplight. I reached the door and grabbed the knob. Locked. I knocked. Guys, seriously? Their shadows passed by, but no one opened. My wet hair froze in the wind, strands stiffening. Come on, it's cold, I called. Open up. Inside I heard muffled laughter. They were messing with me, making me answer the door like the old man. Haha, I said, knocking again. We're even, okay? Joke's over. Footsteps crunched on the path behind me, heavy, slow, not like my friend's light. Fast tread, something that didn't hurry. The hairs on my neck lifted. I pressed my forehead to the door. Guys, this isn't funny. Open the door now. On the other side, I heard Nate's voice close to the wood. Who is it? He was playing it out. The footsteps stopped right behind me. For a split second, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe another guest, maybe the housekeeper, but my body had already decided, lungs sucking in a sharp, icy breath. Open the door, I whispered, please. Who do you belong to? Nate said from inside, still joking. The voice behind me answered, overlapping mine. Who do you belong to? It was Harold. Right behind me, close enough that I felt the warmth of his breath through my damp hair. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Open the door, I repeated, but my voice came out small. Door's locked, ting. Nate sing-song. You have to answer. My heart hammered so hard it hurt. I could feel Harold's presence, like a shadow pressed against my spine. Who do you belong to? He asked again, softer now, almost curious. I squeezed my eyes shut. We're together, I said, 4 of us. We belong to each other. Silence. I waited for his hand on my shoulder, for something cold and wrong to wrap around my neck. The porch light went out. Something moved past me, close enough that my coat brushed against rough fabric, and I smelled old wool and stale tobacco. Footsteps shuffled up to the door. There was a click as the lock turned. The door swung inward an inch. Harold's voice drifted inside. Don't tease them. He shuffled away down the path, disappearing into the dark between cabins without looking back. I stumbled in, slamming the door behind me, breath coming too fast. Nate and Liz stared at me, their faces drained of color. Dude, Nate said quietly, we thought it was you doing the voice. Liz nodded, one hand pressed to her chest. We heard you knock once. Then someone said, who do you belong to from outside? We thought you were messing with us. I sank onto the bed, shivering. The kettle started to whistle on its own, a thin, lonely sound that made my teeth clench. The next morning, I went back to the office to complain, to say something. I wasn't sure what. The front desk woman listened, expression unreadable. When I finished, she sighed. I told you to lock your door before dark. He was right behind me, I said. If something happened... Nothing did, she said. He opened your door. He made sure you got inside. That's what he does. That's not normal. She finally met my eyes. Up here? It is. I wanted to argue, but the words died when I saw the bulletin board behind her. It was covered in tacked-up papers, notices about snowmobile rentals, a lost dog poster, an outdated ski hill flyer, and a black and white photograph in the center. It showed the lodge years ago. Fewer cabins, more trees. A younger version of the front desk woman stood on the porch. Beside her, a man in a heavy coat, hand on her shoulder. A man with Harold's eyes. On the back counter, the housekeeper folded towels. Her scar caught the fluorescent light. As she turned away, I saw it clearly. A second smaller scar at the base of her throat, like a thumbprint. He used to ask me that too, she said quietly, not looking at me. When I was little, and the trucks would come up from the highway with workers, he'd go cabin to cabin and ask us who we belonged to. And if you didn't have an answer? I asked. Her mouth tightened. The ones who didn't answer never stayed long. The front desk woman shot her a sharp look. The housekeeper lowered her eyes and pushed the cart away. I rubbed my chilled hands together. So what is he doing now? Same thing he's always done, the woman said. He checks. He makes sure the people who come here are claimed, that they're traveling together, that someone somewhere would miss them if they didn't go home. And if they're not? I asked. A snowplow rumbled by outside, filling the window with a curtain of white. Then they shouldn't be here after dark, she said. We left a day early. On the way out, our tires hissed through brown slush. As we passed the last curve near the woods, I saw Harold standing at the edge of the trees, one hand on the trunk of a fir. His face was tilted toward the road like he was listening. For a second, I almost stopped. I almost rolled down the window and asked who he belonged to, now that he didn't own the lodge anymore. Instead, I drove on. A month later, back home, an article popped up in my feed about a suspected trafficking route broken up along a mountain highway. It mentioned cheap seasonal lodgings, unclaimed workers, people whose families didn't know they were gone until years later. The lodge's name wasn't in the article, but something about the description, the way it talked about cabins and trucks and people who didn't belong to anyone on paper, made my stomach knot. I thought about the housekeeper's scar, about the way she'd said he used to ask me that too, about the front desk woman's careful, practiced, harmless. And I realized, maybe Harold wasn't the danger. Maybe he was just the only one still asking the right question. Who do you belong to? Up there, in that town, in those cabins that waited for dark, there was a right answer, and a very, very wrong one. I'd been driving for 9 hours when I ignored the local's warning. He was just some guy at the coffee shop that morning, a bearded dude in a Carhartt jacket, stirring sugar into his cup like he had all the time in the world. I'd asked the barista about road conditions through the pass, and he'd chimed in without looking up. Fuel up at the station in town, he said. Don't stop at Canyon Ridge after dark. Pumps are still live, but the place is closed. People get weird up there. What do you mean, weird? I asked. He shrugged. It's an abandoned station in the middle of nowhere by a shuttered road. You're tired, you're cold, your brain fills in the blanks. Just don't stop there. You'll be fine. I filed it away under local superstition and left it there. By dusk, I'd burned through more gas than I'd planned. Snow had started falling in earnest, not the pretty kind. This was the thick, sideways stuff that whips across the road in sheets. The wind pushed at my little car like it was trying to blow it off the mountain. The needle on the fuel gauge was flirting hard with E when I saw the sign. Canyon Ridge Fuel. 2 miles. Last gas. There you are, I muttered, relief loosening my shoulders. The driveway was half plowed, snow rutted with old tire tracks. The station sat back from the road, a low squat building with a flat roof and a faded canopy over 2 pumps. Half the bulbs were dead, the rest buzzed and flickered. The store windows were papered over from the inside. It did unmistakably look abandoned. But the pump screen blinked awake when I pulled up. When I slid my card in, it beeped and told me to begin fueling like it was any other station. See, I thought. People are dramatic. I stepped out of the car. The cold hit like a slap. The wind knifed through my jacket, finding every gap. The pump handle was so icy, it burned. Snow squeaked under my boots with that weird, dry noise it makes when it's way below freezing. As I clicked the nozzle into my tank, I glanced at the store. Every inch of the glass was covered with newspaper tape from the inside. Unlike the lodge's blurred bulletin board, these clippings were haphazard, overlapping, yellowed and warped from moisture. Some pages had fallen, leaving dark gaps where I could see nothing but black. In the center of one window, there was a handprint on the inside of the glass. Just one. Finger spread, smudged. I told myself it was from whoever had closed the place up. I told myself people like to scare each other with stories about abandoned buildings and weird handprints. Behind me, the gas clicked off. I put the nozzle back and screwed on my cap. The wind picked up, lifting a strip of newspaper in the window. It peeled back, flapped, and then tore free, spiraling into the snow. For half a second, I saw inside. Shelves, a counter, a wall of coolers, and behind the counter, the shape of a person standing very, very still. My heart lurched. The paper slapped back against the glass, blocking the view. I swallowed, told myself it was a cutout, a stand-up advertisement. My adrenaline didn't buy it. I could have left. I should have left. Instead, I thought about how many hours I had left to drive and how much I wanted something hot. A coffee, a microwave burrito, anything. The store lights were on dimly. The neon open sign in the window was dark, though. I walked up anyway, boots crunching. The door handle was metal and bitterly cold. When I tugged, it didn't budge. Locked. "Okay," I whispered. "Fair enough." I turned to go back to my car. Something clicked inside the store. I froze, hands still wrapped around the useless handle. There was a sound, impossible to mistake, the mechanical thunk of a lock turning. Then slowly, the door moved, but not outward, inward, just an inch. Not a welcoming swing, more like someone inside had tested it, then let it fall shut again. My hand was still on the handle. "Hello?" I called, my voice sounding small in the wind. "You open?" Silence. Then another click. This one came from lower down near my thigh. I looked down. A heavy sliding bolt I hadn't noticed before was now engaged from the inside. Its solid metal tongue jammed into the frame. The door was locked, but not from my side. My chest felt too tight, like my lungs were trying to climb up my throat. "Okay," I said again, to no one. I let go of the handle, wiped my palm on my jeans, and forced myself to walk back to the car. I got in, shut the door, and hit the lock button automatically. The engine turned over. The headlights washed the convenience store in yellow-white. Behind the newspapered windows, something moved. Just a shift in the shadows, really. But it was enough to make the handprint on the glass seem fresher, closer. I shoved the car into drive. My tires spun for a second on the icy concrete before catching. The car surged forward. Just as I turned toward the main road, another vehicle's lights swung in from the highway. Big, bright, high off the ground. A dark truck. Grill, caked with snow, barreled into the lot, faster than I would have taken it in good weather. It skidded to a stop at the pump opposite mine. For a split second, we were nose to nose. My little hatchback and its huge, idling silhouette. The driver's door opened. A man climbed out, a big guy with a thick beard and a heavy jacket, hood up. I couldn't see his face clearly, just the outline. A thermos clanged as he set it on his hood. I waited for him to glance at me, give that little nod. Strangers share at lonely places. He didn't. His head stayed angled toward the store. Slowly he raised one hand and gave a little wave. To the window. To whoever, or whatever, was behind the paper. My skin crawled. He walked to the pump and lifted the nozzle, but he didn't touch the card reader. He just stood there, hose in hand, watching the store. I realized my foot was still on the brake, the car idling in the middle of the lot like a target. He finally looked at me. Even through my fogged windshield, I felt the weight of his stare. I mouthed, "Is it open?" and lifted my hands in a helpless shrug. His face was expressionless for a beat. Then he smiled. But it wasn't friendly. It was the stiff, practiced smile of someone who's been told to act normal but doesn't quite remember how. He shook his head slowly. His lips formed the word, exaggerated for me to read, "Go." I didn't need to be told twice. I pressed the gas and slid onto the highway, the rear end fishtailing slightly before catching. In the mirror, I watched the station shrink. The truck driver still hadn't started pumping. He was walking toward the store. I made it to the next town on adrenaline and fumes, checked into a cheap motel with a flickering vacancy sign, and asked the night clerk, "Hey, is there another gas station between here and Canyon Ridge? I stopped at one that looked closed, but the pumps worked." He cut me off. "You went to that place?" "Yeah. I mean, just long enough to fuel. Is it actually closed, or—" "You shouldn't be stopping there after dark," he said sharply. "Locals know better." "Why?" My voice came out shakier than I meant. He hesitated, then jerked his chin toward a newspaper rack by the door. The top paper was folded, but the headline was still visible. "Pair escapes. Canyon Ridge robbers. Victims say they were locked up." And my hands started to tingle. "People use it to do bad things," the clerk said. "Got shut down after a fire a few years back. Owner ran a side hustle, lured stranded drivers in, radioed his buddies, took what they wanted. Cops busted it, place went under. But the pumps stayed live until the company cut them, and by then..." "By then what?" I whispered. By then people had gotten used to using it. "Folks who don't like questions. They blocked the road last winter, tried to drag a woman out of her car. She got away by backing into a snowbank. Sheriff says it's under control, but..." He shook his head. "Why don't they just shut the whole thing down?" I asked. He laughed once without humor. "You tell me who's gonna pay for that up here. Until somebody buys it or bulldozes it, we just tell people not to stop after dark." Deniable. Just a suggestion. Just a people get weird up there. "What about inside, Walt?" I asked. "I thought I saw someone behind the counter." The clerk's mouth flattened. Probably did. Squatters, thieves. Folks who know the lock from the inside. I thought about the bolt sliding shut while my hand was on the door. The guy in the truck waving at the window. His unconvincing smile when he told me to go. "You said a pair escaped?" I asked. "How?" "Trucker pulled in," he said. "Saw some shadows moving in the store. Knew the place was supposed to be empty. He blocked the driveway with his rig and called it in. The people inside, tourists, were tied up on the floor. Said someone had locked the door from the inside while they were pumping gas. Took their phones. Said they thought it was a joke at first." My heart pounded so hard it made my vision go blurry for a second. A trucker. Someone who recognized weird and did something about it. The man in the lot. The wave. The warning. "Was he hurt?" I asked. "The trucker?" The clerk shrugged. "He got roughed up. Burn scars from the fire, I heard. People like that don't always stick around to be thanked." I saw in my mind the way the guy at the station had moved. Cautious, deliberate, like he knew he wasn't just filling up a tank. I wondered if his thermos was hiding scars on his knuckles. Back in my room, I peeled off my coat and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my hands. They smelled faintly of gasoline and cold metal. I kept thinking about the musical little beep of the pump accepting my card, the thunk of the internal lock, my own hand on the handle while someone else decided whether I was coming inside. It was such a small thing, stopping for gas, such an ordinary piece of travel. We tell ourselves the scary stuff is obvious. Masked villains, dark alleys, gleaming knives. But out there, in that snow-choked stretch of nowhere, The danger looked like a normal transaction in an unlocked pump. The only difference between me and the people in that article was timing, and one stranger who did not pretend he didn't see anything. Since that night, whenever someone says, "Don't stop there after dark," I don't argue. I don't roll my eyes or assume they're being dramatic. I just remember the feel of that bolt sliding home from the wrong side of the door, and I keep driving. By the time I saw the red truck for the second time, I'd already convinced myself I was imagining things. The cabin was technically an Airbnb ski chalet, but that made it sound fancier than it was. In reality, it was a glorified rectangle with wood paneling, a fireplace that smoked more than it heated, and a porch light that flickered every time the wind gusted. "It's cozy," my girlfriend Mia said diplomatically when we arrived. "It's cheap," I corrected. We'd booked it for 3 nights over New Year's week, thinking we'd get snow, solitude, and some couples' time away from our phones and jobs. The listing mentioned occasional road noise from passing locals, but the nearest town was 10 miles away, and the 2-lane mountain road in front of the cabin barely saw any traffic. At least that's what we thought. On the first night, around 9 p.m., I heard an engine. I was poking at the fire, coaxing damp wood to catch, when the sound filtered in, a low, steady rumble. Headlights swept through the front window, drawing 2 long rectangles of white across the ceiling. A red pickup eased past, old body style, boxy with a lift kit and big tires. It drove slow, like the driver was rubbernecking. "Neighbor," Mia called from the tiny kitchen, where she was wrestling with the stove. "Just a truck," I said. "Guys taking in the sights." I didn't think much of it. Trucks are the background noise of mountain towns. An hour later, at 10:02 p.m., I heard the engine again. Same rumble, same sweep of headlights. This time I was on the couch. Half asleep, Mia curled against me. The porch light flickered and steadied as the truck went past. Red paint, same lift, same slightly too slow roll. "Huh," Mia murmured. "He's making the rounds. Maybe he forgot something in town," I said. "Or he's plowing, or whatever." In the city, someone driving by your place twice in an hour would barely register. Out there, in the middle of empty woods and winter dark, it lodged in the back of my brain like a splinter. The next day, our nearest neighbor introduced himself. I was struggling with the lock on the outdoor gear shed when a voice behind me said, "You folks in the old Gaines cabin?" I jumped hard enough to nearly brain myself on the doorframe. He laughed. "Didn't mean to scare you. I'm Carl. I'm up the road a ways." He was maybe late 50s, hair gone mostly white under a beanie, weathered face, layers of flannel under a canvas jacket. One of those guys who seem born in boots. "Yeah, we're just here for a couple nights," I said. "City escape." He nodded. "Storm's supposed to dump tonight. Roads ice up fast after dark on this stretch." "We'll be in," I said. "Fire, hot cocoa, all that." He shifted his weight, looking past me at the road. "Good," he said. "Best place for you after dark is inside. Lights off, curtains drawn. If you see Earl go by, don't wave him down. Just let him pass." "Earl?" I asked. "Red Chevy," he said. "You'll see him. He makes his rounds." Something unpleasant curled in my stomach. "He a cop?" Carl snorted. "He thinks he is. Self-appointed neighborhood watch. Likes to know who's renting which place, who's coming in late, that kind of thing." "So he's harmless?" I asked. Carl's jaw tightened around the word. "He's nosy, and he doesn't always take no thanks as an answer. Just let him drive on, and don't be out walking the road after dark. Clear?" "Clear," I said. He tapped the side of the shed with his knuckles. "Lock up tight. Wendell yanked doors right off the hinges." Then he walked back to his old blue truck, leaving a trail of prints in the snow. I watched him go, the phrase, "after dark," echoing in my head. The storm rolled in with dinner. By 7, snow was slanting across the windows, so thick we couldn't see beyond the porch. The road disappeared. The trees disappeared. The only world left was the cabin's warm rectangle of light. We cooked pasta and played cards by the fire, our phones sitting in a little pile on the table. I tried to relax into the quiet. Tried not to think about unseen trucks and men doing rounds. At 8:59 p.m., the red truck drove by. Even with the curtains half drawn, I could see the glow of its headlights bleeding around the edges. The engine noise was muffled by the snow, but still distinct, a kind of rough, throaty idle. The porch light flickered once as it passed. "Earl?" Mia asked, looking up from her cards. "Probably," I said. "He's punctual." "You're doing that thing," she said. "What thing?" "Overthinking strangers," I smiled. "Sorry." It wasn't until the third pass that it stopped being funny. At 10:04 p.m., the truck went by again. Same speed. Same lingering way the headlights dragged across the cabin. "Okay, that's weird," Mia said. "Maybe he's plowing turnouts," I said. "In a lifted truck with no plow?" she said. "Come on." I peered through a gap in the curtain, careful not to move it too much. The truck's taillights glowed red in the snow as it crawled up the hill. No logos. No business name. Just an old Chevy with one dented fender. I saw the driver's silhouette, cap pulled low, shoulders thick under a jacket. One arm draped over the top of the steering wheel. He didn't look over. He didn't need to. He already knew we were there. Around midnight, I couldn't sleep. Mia was out cold beside me, the tiny bedroom warm from the overworking heater. I lay on my back, listening to the wind and the occasional pop of the settling cabin. Somewhere outside, ice shifted in the trees with small, cracking sounds. Once, something thumped softly against the side of the house, snow sliding off the roof, maybe. And then, faint under it all, I heard it again. An engine. I slipped out of bed and padded to the front room. The glow of headlights seeped around the curtains. I stood there, heart thudding, watching the light move along the wall. It went past the windows, and then slowed. The glow brightened, backing up, as if the truck had stopped right in front of the cabin. I edged closer to the curtain. The porch light flickered once, twice, then went out. The cabin felt instantly smaller, darker. I held my breath and lifted the corner of the curtain an inch. The red truck idled in the driveway, facing the front door. The driver's side window was down. I could see the outline of a man's head, the plume of his breath, fogging in the cold. His face turned toward the cabin, but I couldn't make out details, just the pale suggestion of skin, the dark hollows where eyes should be. He was parked so close I could have hit his grill with a snowball. We stared at each other through the glass for what felt like a very long time. Then he reached up and flicked his headlights off. The cabin plunged into darkness. The only illumination was the dim orange glow of banked embers in the fireplace behind me. In that faint light, I saw the silhouette of his hand lift in a slow, deliberate wave. I dropped the curtain like it burned. For a full minute, all I could hear was the engine and my own breathing. Then, eventually, the headlights came back on. The truck reversed, turned in a careful three-point maneuver, and drove away down the road at that same unhurried pace. The next morning, Carl knocked on our door. "Y'all okay?" he asked without preamble when I opened it. "Yeah," I said. "Why?" "Saw tracks in your drive," he said, glancing past me at the snow. "Fresh ones, late night." I swallowed. "Earl? Red truck?" he asked. "Yeah." Carl pressed his lips together. "What time?" "Around midnight," I said. He just parked, sat there. "He talked to you?" "No, just stared, killed his lights." Carl's gaze flicked to the porch light. "That thing always been out?" "We thought the bulb blew," I said. He grunted. "He's got a CB in that truck. Likes to sit and listen. Likes to play with people's power sometimes." "That's not comforting," I said. "I told you not to be out on the road after dark," he said. I should have added, "Don't answer the door. He thinks renters don't belong here. Thinks he's doing the town a favor, reminding folks this isn't a resort." "Has he hurt anyone?" I asked. Carl hesitated just long enough for my stomach to lurch. "Officially?" he said. "No. Guy who owned this place before you did, Gaines, slid off the road one night. Earl was the last one to see him alive. Said he warned him about driving after dark. Sheriff called it black ice." "And unofficially?" I pushed. Carl looked over my shoulder into our cozy cabin with its mismatched furniture and half-burned logs. "Unofficially, Earl likes to escalate until someone proves they're scared enough to leave," he said. "For some people, that's a stare. For some, it's sitting in their driveway. For others..." He trailed off. "Others what?" I asked. He sighed. "You see that scar on my leg?" He slapped his thigh. I hadn't noticed the slight hitch in his walk until he pointed it out. "Truck pushed me into a snowbank 3 winters ago. Claimed he didn't see me walking on the shoulder. Sheriff filed it under accident. Jesus." "That man's whole world is this road," Carl said. "He thinks it's his job to decide who belongs up here after dark. And he's real gentle about making sure folks get the message." Gentle. The same word the motel clerk had used about the gas station's bolts. The same tone the lodge woman used when she said, "harmless, deniable, every time." "Why don't you report him again?" I said. "We do," Carl said. "We call. We complain. The sheriff talks to him. And still, when the snow falls, there he is. Because in a place like this, guys like Earl are convenient. They scare off tourists without the town having to put up signs." He met my eyes. "You leaving today?" "We were supposed to stay one more night," I said. "I'd go," he said simply. "Storm's getting worse tonight. Roads will be hell." He paused. "And Earl will be out." We left. Packed up our stuff, loaded the car, and started down the mountain in the pale wash of afternoon. The road was slick, but drivable. Snowbanks closed in on either side, tall and white and unmoving. We passed Carl's place. He waved from his porch. I felt better once we made it past the last cluster of cabins, like we'd crossed an invisible line. Around the final curve before the main highway, the red truck appeared in my rear view mirror. It merged from a side road, falling into line behind us, with the fluid familiarity of someone who'd done this 100 times. "He's tailing us," Mia said, her hand gripping the door handle. "Probably just going to town," I said, heart pounding. The truck tucked itself a little too close to my bumper. I checked my speed, just under the limit. I kept my eyes on the road, knuckles white on the wheel. For 5 miles he followed. When we hit a straightaway, he pulled out like he was going to pass. For a moment, his grill was right beside my window, massive and red and streaked with dirty snow. I could see his face clearly through the glass now. Late 40s, maybe, beard shot with gray. Baseball cap low. He didn't look at me. He was staring straight ahead, jaw clenched, hands at 10 and 2 in that stiff, overcorrect way that said he was performing for someone. His CB crackled on the dash, little bursts of static. He had no passengers. He didn't pass. He slid back behind us, then eased farther away. By the time we reached the junction with the highway, his truck was a distant outline in the swirling snow. We turned. He kept going straight, continuing his slow patrol of the mountain road that he'd decided was his. Back home, when people ask how the trip was, I talk about the snow, the fire, the way the stars looked when the clouds parted for 10 miraculous minutes. I don't talk about Earl, because he's not a campfire story. He's not a ghost or a creature or a cautionary tale wrapped up in a neat lesson. He's just a man with a truck and too much time, and a town that quietly appreciates the way he makes outsiders feel unwelcome. When you think about it that way, he's worse than a monster. Monsters follow rules. Guys like Earl make them up as they go, one icy curve at a time. I didn't notice the newspaper clippings at first. We checked into the motel after sunset, which was our first mistake. Every local we'd talked to that day had told us some version of the same thing. Get where you're going before dark. Road's not safe once the sun's down. Mountain does what it wants at night. Nobody said why. Just that tight-lipped, half-joking tone people use when they're not really joking at all. But we were behind schedule. The snow started early, and the pass took longer than planned. By the time we rolled into the little mountain town, the sky was black, and the flakes were blowing sideways. The only thing that looked open was a low, L-shaped motel with a buzzing vacancy sign and a soda machine out front that was more ice than Coke. We'll be fine, Doc, my boyfriend Drew said as I parked. It's just one night. You said that about the last place, I muttered, killing the engine. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel. And the power went out for 6 hours. That was different, he said. That was... Okay, that was also winter in the mountains, but this one has free breakfast. He pointed at the peeling sign like that proved anything. I almost suggested sleeping in the car, but the heater had been losing the battle against the cold for the last hour, and my legs were trembling from constantly correcting little slips in the snow. We were both exhausted. The kind of exhausted that makes you choose easy over smart. The motel office smelled like coffee and damp carpet. The guy at the desk looked like he'd been poured into his chair sometime in the 90s and never quite made it back out. Late 50s, heavy-set, beard going to white around the edges. Got a room? Drew asked, stamping snow off his boots. The clerk slid a clipboard toward us without standing. Only one left. Storm's got the pass shut down both ways. Lucky us, I said. You headed through or staying in town? He asked, like it mattered. Through, Drew said. Just needed a place for the night. On to Denver in the morning. The clerk nodded slowly. His eyes drifted to the window, where the snow was thick enough now that the world beyond the glass looked like television static. You want to be gone before they start plowing, he said. They don't shut this town down for tourists. We do what we have to do to keep folks moving. Something in the way he said "we" made my shoulders tighten. Drew reached for the clipboard. What happens if we leave after they start plowing? He joked. The clerk chewed that over for a second, then said, You won't. He tapped the form. Sign there. There was a small scar running across his knuckles, pale, ropey, like he'd grabbed barbed wire once and never let go. It disappeared under the cuff of his flannel. I heard myself ask, Any chance of getting a room on the ground floor? I'm not great on ice. He hesitated, just a little too long. Then, no. All that's left is upstairs, end of the row, room 23. He slid a metal key across the counter, the tag swinging. 23. We'll take it, Drew said, already turning toward the door. The clerk caught my eye. You keep that chain on, he said. We've had break-ins. Someone trying doors? I asked. He watched my face like he was measuring how much to say. You get folks who don't know when to call it a night, he said. Stay put. Don't go wandering after dark. Not up here. I wanted to ask more, but Drew jangled the key. Babe, come on. I'm freezing my ass off. On the way out, I passed a bulletin board with a curled flyer for a lost dog, an outdated ski hill map, and something half hidden under another notice. A grainy photo of 2 young women in winter jackets, both smiling. The heading said, Missing. I didn't have the energy to read the rest. I just followed Drew back into the cold. Room 23 was at the far end of the second floor balcony, down a narrow strip of concrete with a rail that felt too low. The wind knifed through the gaps in the railing, pushing little drifts across our path. You'd think, with only one room left, they'd have put us closer, I muttered, shifting my duffel. Maybe they're giving us privacy, Drew said. The room was fine. 2 full beds with threadbare blankets, a bolted-down dresser, an ancient TV, a bathroom with a fan that whined when the light was on. The heater rattled to life in the corner, pumping out warm air that smelled like dust. It wasn't until I shut the door and reached up automatically to flip the deadbolt that I saw them. At first, my brain filed it as ugly wallpaper, but it wasn't wallpaper. It was paper. Every inch of wall around the door frame was covered in taped up newspaper clippings. Not neat and framed, not curated like some quirky decor. They were overlapping and haphazard, yellowed at the edges, some half torn, headlines and photos and little boxed-off columns, all crowded together. "Ah," I said. Drew turned from the bed, where he was testing the mattress with one knee. "What?" I just stepped aside so he could see. He frowned. "That's a choice." I stepped closer, tugging off my gloves, and started reading. Hikers missing in early season storm. Couple fails to check out of local motel. Search called off for lost snowshoer. Parents plead for help finding daughter. Photos stared back at me. A man in his 30s with a close-cropped beard. A teenage girl in a prom dress. A couple in matching Christmas sweaters. A family at a viewpoint with a mountain behind them. Some of the headlines were cut off. Dates torn away. But they were all about the same thing. People who came to the mountains and never made it home. Buried among them, I saw a clipping from a larger article. Authorities urged visitors not to underestimate winter conditions and to avoid traveling after dark, especially on lesser-used side roads. That phrase again, same warning, over and over from different mouths. "What the hell is this?" I whispered. Drew shrugged. "Maybe it's like a memorial thing, motivational. Be careful or you'll end up on the wall." "That's not motivational," I said. He sidled up next to me, squinting at a photo of 3 guys in orange ski jackets. "They've got a type," he said. "Tourists who don't read weather reports." I touched one of the articles lightly. The paper was soft and brittle under my fingers, like it might crumble. "This is creepy," I said. "Why is it just in this room?" Drew was quiet for a long moment. "Maybe this is where one of them stayed," he said finally. "Whoever runs the place collected stuff?" I thought of the desk clerk's scarred hand, the way he'd said there was only one room left and it just happened to be this one. My stomach turned. I grabbed the remote from the dresser and flicked on the TV. White noise and a faint talk show buzz filled the room. Anything to drown out the hum in my head. We tried to make it normal. We dumped our bags, changed into sweatpants, argued over whether to order delivery from the one pizza place still open or eat the sad granola bars in our backpacks. Drew made some joke about honored to stay in the famous missing tourist suite. And I punched his arm harder than necessary. The heater rattled. The bathroom fan whined. The snow tapped against the window in sporadic bursts, ice crystals scratching like fingernails. But no matter what we did, my eyes kept drifting back to the wall. The clippings were precise in their horror, all those little details you only say to reporters when you're desperate. "Yeah." She texted me a picture of the snow. He said they might stay one more night. They were supposed to check out by 11. Right next to the door, at eye level, was a clipping that looked newer than the rest. Less yellow, sharper ink. Couple vanishes en route to Denver. Below it, in smaller print, last seen checking into a mountain motel. The photo was of a young couple leaning against a hatchback, laughing at something out of frame. The guy's arms were thrown wide, the girl's head tilted back. For a second, my heart stopped. They weren't us, not literally, but he had the same shaggy dark hair as Drew, and she wore the same style of beanie I was currently wearing, and their car was the same color as ours. The resemblance was just close enough to feel like a threat. "Okay," I said. "I want to change rooms." "We can't," Drew said. He said this was the last one. "I don't care. I'll sleep in the lobby." "You're tired, babe," he said gently. "It's getting to you. It's just paper. Look, if it really bothers you, we'll cover it." He pulled the motel's extra blanket out of the closet and tried to stretch it across the wall. It fell short, leaving rows of eyes and headlines peeking out along the edges. "That makes it worse," I said. He laughed weakly. "Yeah, okay." That was stupid. There was a knock on the door. We both froze. Not a pounding, not a frantic hammering. Just 3 quick, light knocks. Polite. Maybe that's the guy with extra blankets, Drew whispered. Or room service, I said. In this palace. I looked through the peephole. The distorted fisheye view showed an empty balcony. Just the stained concrete walkway, the rusted metal rail, the snow swirling in the spill of the parking lot lights. No one's there, I said. Drew frowned. Maybe someone hit the wrong door. He opened the door before I could stop him. The balcony was empty. Wind gusted in, bringing icy flakes that stung my bare ankles. The concrete was covered in a thin layer of snow, smooth and unmarred. No footprints. Drew shut the door slowly. We locked the deadbolt, set the chain, and turned the latch on the handle for good measure. I realized my hands were shaking. Mountains settle, Drew said after a moment. Plows go by. Things rattle. It could have been anything. Anything that knocks 3 times? I said. He didn't have an answer for that. I woke up at 2:13 a.m. to the sound of voices, muffled out in the parking lot below our window. Low enough that my brain tried to file it as part of a dream, but sharp enough that I started to wake up. I'd said they checked in late, or they always check in late. You see the car, Colorado plates. Drew was a heavy, oblivious weight beside me, snoring faintly. The TV was off, but a rectangle of orange light seeped in from the parking lot, carving our room in 2. The heater hummed. I slid out of bed carefully and went to the window. The curtains had a gap, just a narrow one, but enough. 2 men stood next to our car. One of them was the desk clerk, his big shoulders hunched in the snow. The other was slimmer, wearing a dark jacket and a baseball cap pulled down low. They had their heads bent together, but the wind kept carrying bits of conversation up to me. Denver in the morning. Storm's not letting up. No one's expecting them. My stomach lurched. The slimmer man ran his fingers along the top of our car door, like he was checking for something. Then he looked up toward the 2nd floor. For a moment, I thought he was staring straight at me. My breath hitched. I ducked back, pressing against the wall, listening. Room 23, the clerk said. Last one left. The other man laughed softly. You're getting predictable, Mark. Easier to keep track that way, the clerk said. I heard a faint jangle, the sound of keys. My throat went dry. I scanned the wall blindly, my hand landing on the newest clipping. I read the tiny print under the photo. Last seen at a roadside motel in town name redacted at family's request. Authorities believe they never made it onto the highway due to deteriorating overnight conditions. Never made it onto the highway. You've got your system, the other man said outside. Just make sure they don't panic. That's how people get hurt. They're tired, Mark said. They won't. I backed away from the window, heart hammering, and went straight to Drew's bed. Wake up, I hissed, shaking his shoulder. Drew, wake up now, he groaned. What's... Shh. I put my hand over his mouth. They're talking about us. Nothing wakes someone up faster than that sentence. His eyes snapped open wide. I moved my hand. Who? He whispered. The clerk and some guy. They're by the car. He has keys, I said. He said we're not expected. He said we won't make it to the highway. Drew struggled upright, blinking the sleep away. You sure? I grabbed his chin and turned his face toward the wall, toward all those staring eyes and headlines. Look where we're sleeping, I said. Yes, I'm sure. There was a soft clink at the door, not a knock this time, metal on metal. The doorknob turned a fraction of an inch, then stopped against the deadbolt. Another pause, then the faintest rattle of the chain. We stared at the door, frozen. The heater hummed. My pulse roared in my ears. You locked the bolt? A muffled voice asked from outside. Yeah, another said. They did the chain too. Good, the first voice, Mark, said. Means they're spooked, but not stupid. The knob turned again, more firmly now. The door shuddered in its frame. Drew leaned close to my ear. Say something. something, he whispered. Ask what they want. You say something, I hissed back. The decision was made for us. Hey, up there, Mark called, voice suddenly bright and friendly. Everything okay in 23? I swallowed, feeling the dryness all the way down. We're fine, I said, trying to sound half asleep and annoyed rather than terrified. Just trying to get some rest. Storm's getting worse, Jan, he said. Power might flicker. Wanted to check you had enough blankets. You can leave them at the office, I said. We're good? There was a beat of silence. Then the other man spoke, voice lower, closer to the wood. You've got somewhere you need to be tomorrow, right? Denver, I said. Early? You won't make it out ahead of the plows, he said. Roads are bad. Best to stay put till afternoon. We already knew the script. We'd been hearing variations of it all day. Stay. Don't drive after dark. Don't leave. Something in the way he said, stay put, made my skin crawl. We'll take our chances, Drew cut in. Thanks for the concern. It's not just concern, the man said. We've got a system for storms like this. We keep folks safe. Keep track of them. A system. Room 23. Not expected. My eyes flicked to the newest clipping again. I appreciate it, I said, forcing steadiness into my voice. But we really need to go. Early. Family stuff. People are expecting us. Silence. Then Mark said, Well, that's good then. Makes you easier to trace if something happens. He chuckled as if that was a normal joke. Get some sleep, he added. We'll talk in the morning. Maybe roads will be better by then. Their footsteps retreated down the balcony. Drew and I sat there in the dim light for a long minute, listening until the voices faded completely. Then he said, We're leaving. Now, it's funny the things you think about when you're deciding between the fire you can see and the one you can't. Outside, icy roads, zero visibility, a storm that had already shut down the pass. Every local insisting we'd be insane to drive. Inside, two men who had just casually discussed our room number and whether anyone was waiting for us, surrounded by a collection of other people who once thought they were just staying one night. Maybe we're overreacting, Drew said weakly, even as he shoved his feet into his boots. Maybe they really do just keep files on missing hikers. Then why put them in here? I snapped, zipping my jacket. Why the newest one about a couple who vanished on the way to Denver? He didn't have an answer. We moved fast. Years of road trips kicked in, that muscle memory of packing in the dark. Toiletries swept into bags, chargers yanked from outlets, clothes stuffed into duffels. I shoved the spare pillowcase aside and felt something crinkle under the mattress. There was an envelope taped there. No name, no address, just a strip of brittle tape. My hand shook as I ripped it down. Inside were 3 more clippings. No photos, just text. All from the same local paper. The first was a follow-up about the missing couple, reporting that the search had been scaled back due to weather. The second was a quote from a sheriff about the dangers of leaving safe shelter during a storm. The third was an op-ed. It was just a few paragraphs. Someone arguing that small towns shouldn't be held responsible when outsiders ignore warnings. That visitors choose to stay when they're told not to travel. That the mountain takes back what it wants. At the bottom, in different handwriting, someone had scrawled, "They didn't choose." Drew glanced over my shoulder, reading. "Who wrote that?" he whispered. "I don't know." He pointed at the last 3 words. "Whoever did, they were in this room." The heater rattled, then cut off abruptly. The sudden silence was deafening. The lights flickered, went out, came back dimmer. The TV flashed blue, then died. "Power's going," Drew said. "We need to move." We cracked the door and listened. No footsteps, no voices, just the roar of wind and the occasional squeal of overburdened plows somewhere in the distance. The balcony outside was a white strip of ice and shadow. "We'll go straight to the stairs," Drew said. "No running. Running's how you slip. Keys ready. Get in, get out." "What if they're watching?" I asked. Then we were just too stupid to stay put, he said. Exactly what they keep saying. He took my hand. It was the only part of me that felt warm. We slipped out. The air knifed my lungs, so cold it made my teeth ache. Snow stung my cheeks, swirling under the balcony roof in little eddies. I forced myself not to look toward the office, not to look at the dark shape of the road, just the stairs. One step, then another. The metal treads were slick. My boots skidded once. Drew's grip tightened, keeping me upright. The concrete of the ground floor felt almost soft after the sharper bite of the staircase. We made it to the car. Our breath fogged the windows as we fumbled with doors, with bags, with seat belts. My hands barely worked, fingers numb and clumsy. Come on, Drew muttered, jamming the key into the ignition. The engine coughed, hesitated, then roared to life. Headlights carved twin tunnels through the blowing snow. In the rearview mirror, I saw the motel office door slam open. Mark burst out, flannel flapping. The slimmer man followed, pulling his jacket on hurriedly. They both jogged toward the bottom of the stairs, then stopped when they saw the car moving. I braced for them to wave us down, to step in front, to shout. They didn't, they just watched. Mark raised his hand, not to signal us, but in a weird, almost casual salute. "Don't drive after dark," he called, his voice faint through the glass. Drew put the car in gear. We rolled past them, tires crunching over packed snow. As we hit the road, I glanced back one last time. From this angle, I could see the second floor of the motel clearly. Room 23's curtains were open a sliver, just enough. A figure stood in the gap, hard to make out through the swirling snow. For a heartbeat, I thought it was a reflection. Then it moved. A pale face, eyes dark shadows, a hand pressed to the glass. Then another face behind it, and another. Too many. I blinked, and it was gone, just the curtains shifting. Drew turned onto the main road. The storm swallowed the motel behind us. We white-knuckled it all the way to the next town, driving 20 in a 50, hazard lights on, passing one overturned pickup and a jackknife semi. By the time we found another motel, a chain, well-lit, blessedly boring, my nerves were shredded. The clerk there looked at our snow-caked car, our shaking hands, and just passed us a key without small talk. No warnings, no system. In our new room, with its generic art and blank walls, I pulled my phone out and searched the name of the town we'd just left along with the word missing. The articles I saw were the same ones we'd just slept under. Hikers, teens, couples, solo drivers. They spanned decades. Some mentioned a local motel, but always without naming it. Others quoted the sheriff reminding visitors to heed local advice and stay indoors during extreme weather. I didn't see any mention of the motel system, of room 23, of men with keys who talked about expectations. I thought about the envelope taped under the mattress. They didn't choose. Someone in that place had wanted it known, wanted someone to understand that not everyone who stayed had willingly ignored warnings. I wish I could say, we called the cops, that we went back with state troopers and found some secret room, some ledger, something concrete. We didn't. We drove home. We told each other we were tired, that we'd overreacted, that nothing had actually happened. But here's the thing about those clippings. They weren't accidents. Someone had cut them out, taped them up, placed that newest one at eye level, hidden the envelope where only a restless sleeper would find it. They'd built a private little museum of people who didn't make it out. A reminder, a warning, or a trophy case. I still don't know which is worse. Now, when a local tells me not to stay after dark, I listen. I don't argue. I don't roll my eyes and assume they're being superstitious. Because sometimes the mountain takes people. And sometimes the people who live on the mountain just help it pick. We wouldn't have noticed him at all if not for the way he smiled. Most people don't smile in a winter storm. Not real smiles, anyway. They tuck their chins into their jackets, squint against the wind, move with purpose. But this man, He walked down the icy sidewalk like he was out for a summer stroll, hands in his pockets, snow piling on the shoulders of his coat. And every few seconds, he turned that fixed, placid smile toward us. At first, I tried to ignore it. We'd spent the whole day on the mountain. Slopes, lifts, burned quads, the works. By the time we trudged back toward our motel, our breath fogged together in exhausted spirals. The storm hit fast, later than forecast, and the flakes had turned wet and heavy. My jacket was soaked through in patches. My fingers throbbed inside my gloves. 2 more blocks, my sister June said, checking her phone. Hot shower, dry socks, almost there. Then she slowed. Hey, you see that guy? I followed her gaze. There he was, 30 feet behind us. Same smile, same steady pace. He wasn't dressed for the weather, thin jacket, no hat, no gloves. Snow collected in his hair like flour dust. But that wasn't the weird part. The weird part was how he looked directly at us every time a gust of wind cleared the air between us. The way he didn't look away when I met his eyes, like he wanted us to know he was watching. Weird, I said under my breath. Probably headed the same direction, June said, though her voice had tightened. We walked faster. He matched us without effort. We crossed the street at the next intersection. He crossed too. We ducked into a convenience store under the bright fluorescent lights, pretending to browse heat pads and cocoa packets. We waited 11 minutes inside, watching the windows fog. When we finally stepped back out, bags in hand, the man was standing across the street, still smiling, still watching. A car rolled past, its headlights sweeping over his face, and that smile looked too rigid, too motionless, like a mask. Okay, June whispered. Nope, absolutely not. We started walking again, fast now, not running, just fast. The man fell into step behind us. The motel we'd booked was the only one still open in winter. A squat U-shaped building with faded red doors and too many dark windows. It was cheap, which mattered to us. It was also quiet, which suddenly mattered a lot less. We hurried across the parking lot, boots slipping on patches of snow-slick asphalt. My pulse thudded in my ears. I didn't dare look back at him again. Don't make eye contact, I muttered. I'm not, June said. Key ready? I fumbled in my pocket, the key card bent, flimsy in my shaking fingers. Room 108, ground floor, corner room. We reached the door. I swiped the card. Red light. No, try again, June said. I swiped. Red. My breath hitched. Try it slower. I swiped. Green. We fell inside, slammed the door, locked the deadbolt, threw the chain, shoved a chair under the knob. All those movie instincts coming to life at once. Only then did I dare peek through the peephole. He stood in the middle of the parking lot, perfectly still, just watching our door, just smiling, not approaching, not leaving, like someone waiting for a bus that would eventually arrive. He didn't follow us all the way here just to stand outside, June whispered. Right? He's not going to come to the door. Maybe he's staying here too, I said. Maybe he's waiting for someone. June stared at me. You don't even believe that, she said. I didn't. Outside, snow hissed softly against the walkway. The overhead lights flickered, dimmed, brightened again. The man hadn't moved. I closed the curtains and sat on the edge of the bed. My legs were shaking, and I didn't know if it was cold or adrenaline. What do we do? I asked. We call the front desk, June said immediately. Have them ask him to leave. She grabbed the sticky notepad by the lamp. The motel's front desk number was printed across the top. She dialed. 1 ring, 2, 3, then, motel office? Hi, there's a man standing outside our room, June said. He followed us from town. He's just there, smiling. Can you send someone? A soft sigh, not annoyed, resigned. Which room? 108. Pause, and then, don't open the door for him. We weren't going to, June said. Can you send security? Another sigh. There's no security, just me. Then call the police, she said, voice rising. He followed us. He does that, the clerk said. It's not illegal to be outside. June stared at the phone like it had just sworn at her. Who is he? Another long silence, then local. Knows these roads, harmless. The tone, flat, rehearsed, made chills crawl up my spine. That's bullshit, June said. He was following us. He follows everyone, the clerk said. He walks the town every night, checks who's here, thinks he's keeping tabs. Just don't open your door. You're not listening, June snapped. He followed us for 20 minutes. He follows tourists, the clerk said, softer now, especially ones he thinks look lost. That word again. Lost. My heart dropped. We're checking out, June said. Right now. You can't, the clerk said. Roads closed past the turnoff. They shut it down 15 minutes ago. My stomach twisted. Of course it was closed. Of course we were trapped here overnight. The clerk lowered his voice. He doesn't break in, he said. He doesn't try doors. He just watches. Don't give him a reason to do more. Why does he do this? June demanded. Why is he... The clerk cut in, voice tightening. You're safe inside. Just stay put. Then he hung up. June stared at the dead phone. That is the opposite of reassuring. When I checked again, the man had moved. Not far, just 10 feet closer. Still in the open, still smiling. Closer to our door. Close enough now that the porch light lit his face in a yellow haze. And something about him looked familiar. Not his features. I'd never seen those before. It was the coat. A pale canvas coat with a stitched repair line down one sleeve. I'd seen a repair like that earlier that day. Not on him. On a missing person flyer outside the ski lodge. I scrambled through my pocket for my phone. Opened the camera roll. I'd taken a picture of the lodge's bulletin board while June got hot chocolate, mostly because the flyers were old and strange, a collage of faces belonging to people who'd vanished over the years. I zoomed in on one of them, a man in a repaired canvas coat, local, 40-something, reported missing 6 years ago. Last seen walking home from work in a winter storm. I zoomed in farther. In the picture, he wasn't smiling, but he had the same eyes. My hands went cold. June came to stand behind me. She stared a long time, then whispered, "That's him." "No," I said automatically, even though it was. "He's not missing," she said. "He's still here." "And they let him wander?" I whispered. "He's harmless," she said bitterly. "He's harmless. He's harmless." She tasted the word like poison. That's why they don't call the cops. A realization slid into place with sickening clarity. He wasn't someone the town was afraid of. He was someone they'd been living with, someone whose behavior wasn't surprising to them anymore, someone they'd adapted around. An open secret on two legs. At 3:22 a.m., the heater clicked off. The silence hit like a fist. The hum of the motel, those background noises you never notice until they're gone, all blinked out at once. Lights, heater, mini-fridge, everything. The power had died. The room felt instantly colder. June whispered, "He's going to use this." "Don't open the curtains," I said, but I already knew she was right. I walked to the door, pressed my ear against it. Nothing at first. Just whined and the distant scraping of plows on the highway far outside town. Then, footsteps, slow, deliberate, crunching closer across the fresh snow. I backed away from the door. The footsteps stopped directly outside. Then came the sound that will haunt me until the day I die. A quiet, gentle knock, not threatening, not violent, just familiar. 3 taps, friendly almost. June covered her mouth. The doorknob turned slightly. The chain caught. A breath. Someone's hit the other side of the wood. I could hear the faint scrape of his coat as he leaned toward the door. Then a soft whisper. "You checked in late." June's eyes flooded with tears. "He said that about the others." She whispered, "The flyers." The clerk said, the whisper came again. Lost travelers. The weight of the words pressed against my spine. He wasn't asking to come in. He already thought he knew what we were. You shouldn't stay. I stepped forward before I realized what I was doing. Something inside me snapped. Maybe fear, maybe anger, maybe some primal instinct that had finally had enough. I slammed my palm against the door. Leave us alone. Silence. Total. Still. No footsteps, no breathing, nothing but the wind. We waited 10 agonizing seconds, then 20, then a full minute. When I finally checked the peephole, my hands trembling, the walkway was empty, but the smile lingered in my memory like a bruise. We slept in shifts until dawn. When the power came back, we packed. When the plows cleared the road, we left. As we pulled out of the lot, I looked toward the edge of town. There he was, walking along the snow-packed roadside, same coat, same posture, same smile, not looking at us, not chasing, just walking. The way you walk a route you've walked 1,000 times. The way you follow patterns burned into you by years of repetition. Patterns the town had stopped trying to break. He never left town, June whispered. No, I said. He never stopped following people. No, she swallowed. Then why didn't they warn us? Why didn't they tell us at check-in? Why don't they tell anyone? And that was when I understood, because the town didn't treat him like a threat. They treated him like weather, like black ice, like a downed power line, something you warn strangers about in vague phrases, but never name outright, something that belonged here in a way we didn't, something that became part of the landscape. Some places don't get safer, I said quietly. People just get used to the danger. We didn't stop until we were 2 towns away, sipping burnt coffee at a highway diner while our hands thawed around the cups. June kept glancing at the window. I kept listening for footsteps. Neither of us said it out loud, but we were both thinking the same thing. Locals don't warn you for fun. They warn you because they assume you'll listen, and if you don't, someone else will be waiting to take notice. Thank you for staying with me through the storm tonight. Winter does something to the truth in mountain towns. It slows it, buries it, packs it down until the only things that still move are the people stubborn enough to stay and the travelers too tired to keep going. If you listen closely across these 6 stories, you probably notice the same echo. Locals telling us not to stay after dark, not to finish the drive, not to pause long enough for the mountain to notice us. They spoke softly, like people who've learned that screaming doesn't save anyone, because danger up here isn't a creature you can stab or a ghost you can outrun. It's quieter. It's human hands doing human things in the dark, sometimes out of fear, sometimes out of habit, sometimes because no one stopped them early enough. The mountain didn't make these people. It just hid them long enough for them to grow into whatever they became. If you made it through all 6 accounts, you know that survival doesn't always look like fighting. Sometimes it looks like listening to a stranger with a scar who's been through this before. Sometimes it looks like leaving before the lights flicker the second time. Sometimes it looks exactly like fear, and fear is the thing that gets you home. And remember, in places where the roads vanish under snow and the houses sit too far apart, the dark doesn't need monsters to be dangerous. It only needs people who've forgotten how to tell the difference between watching over someone and watching them disappear.